very often, and even in Hebrew today. I'll give you an example from modern Hebrew, where you have things like that. You can say, instead of saying Lishkat Rosh HaMemshalah, right, the office of the Prime Minister, what they say normally is Lishkato Shel Rosh HaMemshalah, meaning his office, that of the Prime Minister. You hear it all the time. Those of you who listen to the news in Hebrew, right? Lishkato Shel Rosh HaMemshalah, or Parato Shel Ploni. So it's really redundant, but this usage, Aramaic, has influenced Hebrew, and in Hebrew, in modern Hebrew, you hear it all the time. So it's a pain in the neck to get used to, but once you're aware of it and get used to it, then you have a fighting chance. And in the grammar book, there's a chapter, a small chapter about syntax, and this point is clarified there, I hope. Chapter 10, it's John chapter 10. Chapter 10, it's just a few pages, and it's talked about this. In any event, getting back to the door. But again, you see, if you don't know the grammar, it's puzzling. So again, it depends what type of mentality. If you're used to muddling through, okay, what the heck? No, you can figure out the context anyway. If you're a nudnik like I am, that you feel uncomfortable if every letter doesn't fit in, it's troublesome. So that's why, at least some of you, it's important to know that this is a suffix that is really anticipates a direct object, and in English it's redundant. In English you would translate, shall we appoint Rabbi Yeshua? To translate, shall we appoint him, namely Rabbi Yeshua, it's crazy. Okay? So that's, no, shall we appoint Rabbi Yeshua? What's the answer? Baal Ma'asehu. No, but he's subjectively involved. He was involved in the fight. So therefore, it would, as Rashi explains on the spot, if you take a look, Rashi explains that the insult to Rabbi Akiva would be too devastating if you dafka, insidiously, maliciously appoint Rabbi Gamliel. If we would appoint Rabbi Yeshua to take over Rabbi Gamliel's job after Rabbi Yeshua was the person that fought with him, that's too insulting. That's too much. So Baal Masa, he was involved in the incident, so it would not be appropriate to appoint Rabbi Yeshua. No Bela Rabbi Akiva. Let's appoint, or shall we appoint? It really doesn't make any difference if you have a question mark here or an exclamation point. We actually made another version of this with an exclamation point that didn't make it to part 8. No Bela Rabbi Akiva, shall we appoint? Let's appoint Rabbi Akiva. What about him as a substitute for Rabbi Gamliel? Dilba Anishla. The let lays the flute of. Very interesting answer. Perhaps the Anish, as you see by the coloring, is really a present, right? But I want to emphasize, and there is a, you can have this on the PowerPoint, a usage of the present tense that is a bit surprising to us today is the present tense really often has a future connotation. In other words, we can put it this way. If the technical, real future tense has been taken over by these modal forms, by the Joseph coordinate, whatever you take it. So what do you do with normal future? Very often, the normal future is expressed by the participle, by the so-called present tense anish. What this really means, you see that very clearly here. That's why I love this Gemara. It's good for teaching a little grammar. Dilma Anishle. Perhaps he will punish him. How will he, Rabbi Gamliel, be able to punish Rabbi Akiva? The let lay skut avot. Rabbi Akiva does not have skut avot. Rabbi Akiva, as we know, was as you call him Al Tshuva, and he came from a family that didn't have the merit of their ancestors, and Rabbi Gamliel would be able to tear him apart, and it would be bad. So Rabbi Akiva would be subject to maltreatment that a person from the rabbinical families would not be subject to. Again, I'm not interested right now in discussing whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's for you to think about some other time. So Dilma understand. The important thing I want to stress is that Anish is technically participle, technically a present tense, but the connotation is really future. Perhaps, it doesn't mean perhaps he is punishing him. Doesn't make sense. Perhaps he will punish him, or he would punish him, whichever you like. Okay? The let lays the word let, I'm sure you know by now. Again, I don't know where you're holding in your Talmudic careers. But let, if you don't know, I'll underline it, that let is a combination of la and it. It means yesh. The tough in it is parallel to the shin in yesh. So it means yesh, and la it is let. Okay, so let means it's the same as the Hebrew ain. There isn't. The let lay zut above. This is not colored because it's very hard to say. It's not really a verb, but it's important for you to know anyway. Like eshtachar, so we'll throw it let also, because he doesn't have the merit of his fathers. He doesn't have yichus, as you would say today. Ella, no kvela Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Let us appoint Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Why? To who? You notice, by the way, there's an admixture here of Hebrew and Aramaic together, which happens in the Gemara all the time. Sometimes it's disconcerting, but you have to keep that in mind. There's a lot of Hebrew and Aramaic together in some passages. Behu chacham, behu ashir, behu asiri le'ezra. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah has three advantages. He's a chacham, of course. Rabbi Akiva is a chacham too. He's wealthy, and therefore can't take him on so easily. Sometimes it's good to have money in the bank. But who asiri le'ezra? He's the 10th generation. He has yichus. He is the 10th generation from Ezra. Why is this relevant? So the Gemara goes on to explain in the next. Hu chacham. Next one. The makshile mafarek lay. These are again, remember by the color code. Of course, this is again a participle of present tense. Because if makshile, if they raise difficulties to him, if they ask kusho, okay, makshi is actually a causative, but just like in Hebrew, makshe, laksho means to raise a kusho. The makshile, if they raise a difficulty for him, mafarek like, he will be able to answer it. That's the advantage of him being a chacham. Again, you see the use of the participle, of the so-called present tense, as something that is really more future than present, right? Because if they will, it reminds you a little bit like English, like I am going to do something, which is if they are going to raise difficulties against him. Okay, it's also sort of on the borderline between does it refer to the present and the future. What do you call it? The progressive? Okay. My wife taught English for many years. She's very helpful for me with that too. The makshile, because if they will raise a difficulty against him, mafarek, he will answer it. Makshi, you see, it's plural. Mafarek is singular. Luashir. Di itlay lefaloche leveikasar. It, we talked about a few minutes ago, right? Because if he has the lefaloche, is in a little weird color, because we haven't talked about the infinitive today. But it means, the infinitive meaning to serve. Right? The felachin in Arabic means the Egyptian peasants that I'm sure will be in the news this week. The felachin, they're the workers. They pei lamed chet means to work, the art to serve. Because if it is necessary for him to serve, to pay tribute to who? To the emperor, right? if it's necessary, the job of being head of the Sanhedrin was not purely judicial. In effect, the Rav Gamliel was the head of like the Reish Galuta in Babel. He was the head of the Jewish people. And sometimes he had to deal with the Roman government because they were still under the control of Rome. Because if it is to him, meaning what? If it is necessary for him to pay tribute to the emperor, in other words, he's well-to-do, he's a man of means, he's able to take a trip from Eretz Yisrael to Rome, if necessary, to go and deal with the king, and maybe to bribe him. It's also implied maybe Lefloche means to serve him, to bribe, to pay tribute. Pay tribute literally, I should know tribute sometimes is as a monetary connotation. So if it is necessary for him to go and serve and to pay tribute to the king, he can go and pay tribute and serve the king. Again, the present tense again used with a future connotation, as often happens in the Quran. Hu Asiri Ezra, and he is the 10th generation of Ezra. It lays Hut Avot. He has the merit of his fathers. V'la Matzi Anishtai. La Matzi Anishtai. The word Matzi, in Hebrew, it's Yachol. And he is not able, he would not be able to punish him. Now this structure is interesting. It's different than you would expect. In Hebrew, you would say, Hu Yachol Lahanish. You use Yachol with an infinitive. Yachol Lit. In Babylonian Aramaic, usually, not all the time, but usually, you have one present tense, one participle after the other. This would be like saying in Hebrew, Below Yachol Manish. Below Yachol Anesh. You use a participle followed by another participle. It's a different structure than you're used to. But again, like everything else, if you see it often enough, you absorb it. Okay? But that's the idiom that we make usually. Lo Matzi understand. And again, since he has Zchut Avot, he won't, again, the connotation in the future, he will not be able, we would say in English, to punish him. Literally, he will not be able, punishing him, but in English doesn't come out that. Again, different than Hebrew. In Hebrew, usually with a lamed, la'anosh, or something like that, or la'anish. In Aramaic, usually a participle after the word Matzi. Okay. Ato or atu v'amaru le. Past tense. They came, and they went, and they told him. Who? Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. They went, the Talmidim went, they're looking, it's just impossible not to mention, it's like they're looking for Lahavdil, a million Havdalah, like some people are looking for a replacement for Mubarak. Right? It's not so easy to you get rid of the top man, then you look around for a replacement. And now, you know from the news of the day-by-day news, even if they overthrow Mubarak, who's going to take his place is a big problem. This was not planned in advance, it's just spontaneous. Something similar here. If we get rid of Rav Gamliel, so fine, we finally got to Rav Elazar ben Azariah as the best candidate. So they asked Rabbi Yeshua, Nicha le'lamor de lehevi reish metivta? Is it pleasing? Again, this is an anticipatory pronoun here. Is it pleasant to him, namely to his honor, namely to the master? You see again? You would expect to say Nicha lamar. Is it pleasing to the master? But Nicha le'lamor. Is it pleasant to him, namely to the master? In other words, do you want?